AI could increase your productivity by 100x. There are a lot of tools out there that can help accelerate decision-making, research.
AI is just changing the whole world so rapidly, and you can develop way faster, you can build companies way faster, but you still need this personal connection for trust.
Every entrepreneur that is super successful now will tell you that at one point they were either building in their garage or sleeping on the floor of their office.
It's not just money, right? It's opportunity zones.
All right, now I'm super excited for this week's episode of the Silicon Valley Podcast. We got two gentlemen that have had multiple startups that have incredible stories I know everyone's going to love. Before we start, though, the interview with Brian and Jeff, just going to read our disclaimer. The views expressed in this podcast are for informational purposes only and not financial or legal advice. Consult with a professional for your specific situation. And the views expressed do not necessarily reflect those views of Finalis Inc., Finalis Securities LLC, member FINRA SIPC. And with that, Brian, Jeff, thank you for being on this week's episode of the Silicon Valley Podcast. Now, okay, every moment I'm talking to you guys, you're telling me this happened in your life, that happened in your life, and these are just incredible stories. For our audience out there, I mean, Jeff, Brian, I'm not sure who wants to go first. Maybe Brian and then Jeff. Give us a little bit of background of your career up into this point, just some 40,000 foot level. Then we're going to dive into the questions.
Yeah, of course. So, I always started out as a really curious person. I started actually programming when I was 10 years old. And I ended up getting my undergraduate at Dennis University in economics. And then I went on for my master's a few years later at Columbia University, where I got a Master of Science in technology and business. So, this really kind of led me down a path of entrepreneurship. I followed the normal course that most people do, got a job right out of college with a big corporation, and ended up hating it because, being in cubicles and working these crazy hours and not being your own boss drove me crazy. So I started jumping into the entrepreneurial world. And since then, I've started 6 different tech startups. And as a result of some of the work I did at Columbia University, I've been asked over the last several years to come back and guest lecture at Columbia University as well. And shortly after graduating from Columbia, my master's, I co-founded the Columbia Blockchain Alliance. And so that got me speaking really around the world on blockchain, primarily in the financial services sector.
And Jeff, you have a kind of a similar story as well, right? I mean, you didn't start off in the entrepreneurial world. You were kind of more also the more traditional route. Is that true?
I think maybe I was early in life. I was kind of born an entrepreneur. I started working when I was about 10 or 11 years old, but my professional career for a while was telecommunications, and that's what my father did. And my father was into ham radios, so we built radios in our garage and things like that. But I had a career in telecommunications, but I was passionate about surfing and kite surfing, and I ended up my boss was a golfer and a surfer, and he's like, "What are you doing here? You're gonna be grumpy and lazy like these old other guys here." And I was on one of the best teams at AT&T actually. So anyways, I just quit because I was a pioneer of the sport of kite surfing, and kite surfing was really taking off in the Bay Area. I taught a lot of tech billionaire friends how to kite surf. And then the sport of surfing was like big wave surfing was kind of a gladiator thing that wasn't structured. And I ended up helping start the Big Wave World Tour. So in my younger days, I got to travel all over the planet surfing and chasing big waves. But as a business, I followed this passion path of teaching people water sports. And I taught Larry Page and Sergey Brin and the CFO of Amazon, a lot of tech friends in the Bay Area. I'm right here in Silicon Valley. And it inspired Bill Ty and Charles River Venture. So we ended up doing this event company where we had startups pitching to investors on these water sport trips. And the original trip was in Maui, and there was only about 40 people on the trip. But I was doing these trips also in the snow using kites to go up and down the mountain. And out of this small group came Canva, Ring, Zoom, a ton of blockchain projects. So this Bay Area ecosystem that started traveling around the world and inspiring other founders and stuff ended up inspiring me to get into startups. Originally, when I got into startups, I was doing a lot of hardware stuff in the defense space. And then a little bit later on, I got into more software. And my role originally was always business development, building teams, fundraising, and defining markets.
Jeff, with that, I'm kind of curious. Was it because you put all these people together and they're learning together and you built an ecosystem around them that these strong relationships, these strong bonds may have been able to be formed that resulted in investment? Or was it just by chance that, I mean, how was it that so many great companies and matches were made through facilitating these events?
Well, I think this is a good question because it gets into where we're headed with AI as well. And I was just on one of these events with Bill and his whole team in Maui, and we were talking about, AI is just changing the whole world so rapidly, and you can develop way faster, you can build companies way faster, but it's really, you still need this personal connection for trust. And teaching the water sports and doing these water sports with people. The sport of kite surfing is really like a social sport. So you can have a professional and a beginner all at the same beach, and they're having an equal amount of fun. But it's also, my background originally as a kid was surfing, but kite surfing is a bit more technical. There's gear involved, and it's technical enough for a tech guy that, by the end of a 2-hour kite surfing session, you've really cleared your head. You cannot think about anything else but kite surfing when you're kite surfing. And you have to have somebody help launch your kite and land your kite and things like that. So if you're at the beach in Foster City, early days, not now, but early days, you'd be kite surfing with, Larry Page and Sergey Brin and a bunch of other founders, meeting them at the beach every afternoon. So it just, I think for Bill, Ty, and Silicon Valley Bank, and all these early people that were part of the Mai Tai group that ended up becoming Actai with Bill, and then we had another spinoff with Silicon Valley Bank. It became this trusted community of other founders. It's like, you're stepping off this ledge to start this mission, life mission, and if you have other folks around you and they're telling you their stories, it normalizes things,
That's incredible. And Brian, going back to you, your first startup, how did that even come about? Was it just you were sitting there at the office going, this isn't for me? Or, what were those first steps that pivoted in? Because you said you did 6 companies. So it must have had a pretty good experience for you to keep going at it.
It did. So at the time, I was actually working for a large retail company. And we got onto the show, Queer Eye for a Straight Guy, old TV show many years ago. And the show was going through the store, and the show specifically going to having one of the characters put a jacket on. And that jacket, after that show, that jacket sold out within like 2 weeks. A full year's worth of inventory sold out in 2 weeks. And so that was my aha moment. I was like, wow, so TV product placement is that powerful. So I built a platform that would allow TV producers and retailers to make a connection with their product. So instead of seeing the ticker across the bottom, like on CNN, that ticker, instead of text, was thumbnail images of product. So I developed a technology that allowed the retailers and producers to put references to any item where the camera sees at any given scene, and then send that down to the set-top box. So it was a real-time show of thumbnails that you could see on the screen. And but yeah, so I thought this is a slam dunk. And what I would say as a big lesson learned was I was feeling pretty cocky because I was thinking, I was young. I was thinking this for sure will get the interest of everybody, and I will be able to raise lots of money in the future. By the time I was doing pretty well in the stock market, and I dumped all my own money into the startup, and the product did get a lot of traction. I spoke with every major TV network, and I was very close to signing a deal with Gossip Girl to have products. Yeah, it was pretty cool. I spoke directly to the head of the WB, and they were, they seemed very excited. But at the end of the day, what happened was my model did not fit within the 30-second ad model for TV. So every time a thumbnail image would show on the screen, they treated it as eyeballs, just like a 30-second ad. So it just was a completely unaffordable model, and it killed the whole business. But after that, I had a bug for starting other companies, and I like being my own boss. And I will say, I won't deny that having a steady paycheck was something I missed, but I enjoyed the freedom and just the excitement of starting companies.
Jeff, I mean, you had, I guess, a similar situation where you were at a company and then you started the big wave. You started kite surfing. Was it the freedom that you had, the people that you were meeting? What kept you going? Because that was a number of years ago, and you've never gone back to the 9 to 5, I'd say.
Yeah, I think it was the community and the people I was around. I did do some energy related companies, and I've helped some consumer companies. We had a company that made this app that was a configurator, and you could make customized board shorts and yoga mats. And we had Jennifer Aniston give a yoga mat to Oprah Winfrey with her dogs on it one time. But I took a long path of doing business development for founders and not being the founder myself. And I learned a ton. And, it was like...
Wait, stop right there. Tell us some of these lessons learned. Because, I mean, you're experiencing that. I'm sure most of our listeners are thinking, wait a second. He was sitting there with Sergey, like all these elites. What takeaways did he get from these conversations? What lessons did you learn from doing biz dev, helping these companies?
Well, I did even have one time where Larry Page was talking to me about an idea for me to start a company, and unfortunately, I had to say it was a bad idea. Because he's giving me advice about some water sport thing or something, and but yeah, I mean, I just jumped. I wanted to become an entrepreneur. I wanted to jump in the deep end, and I really. One of the major turning points for me was this one company, a cybersecurity company. It was doing $34 million in sales, but they had a lot of internal problems. And it was a European founder that moved to the United States. And so I just jumped in and helped them with a lot of banking and team problems and legal problems. And I learned a ton there. And I already had all this understanding of success and failure from all these other people in this community, this water sport community that had started all these companies. And I mean, the stories, you could go on and on. I think the main thing is, a simple thing bringing to market is, and Brian and I are working on this now of like, you can do a lot, but you can't do a lot as a startup. So, you got to find a little niche in the market to get started. And as soon as you can, I mean, Brian and I have been involved with a few software projects where you raised a bunch of money and then never hit the market, so it's like, you got to get to market as fast as possible, and then you're going to get input from all your customers, and then you can grow from there.
We'll talk about that. And Brian, I'd love to get your thoughts as well, Jeff, about how quickly should people be developing the product versus getting feedback from the market?
I would say that I jokingly like to say that don't try to build the perfect toaster. And what I mean by that is we all are, in a way, perfectionists. If we want to develop a company, we have our own idea of how the company should be. I would echo what Jeff is saying. You need to get the product done enough quickly out to the hands of users to get them to give you an opinion. There are a number of great online courses through Harvard that talk about lessons about how you launch products. And what they say constantly through these online courses is that you keep your idea extremely simple and try to get it out as quickly as possible. Even if it's buggy, even if you don't think it's anywhere near perfect, the whole point is to get your idea out in front of users for them to start playing around with and then giving you feedback. And then your users will give you your product roadmap.
When building a product and getting it out to market, when should you, because both of your backgrounds, you have an incredible network, but I'm guessing on day one, you didn't want to go to your networks and talk about your product. When do you get to that level of, okay, it's now time to open it up to these VIPs or that top tier of your network and tell them what you're working on? Like, how far along in the iteration process or going out to, when would you feel comfortable doing that?
A lot of people are fearful of speaking to top people in their network right away. I feel differently. I think it's okay to start talking to your top people in your network, but you don't go to them asking for money. You go to them as more of like mentors, and you give them a chance to decide whether or not they want to be involved. They know that you need money. They know you need help, but you approach them with this idea or stance of, hey, so-and-so, I'm working on something that's very cool, and I'd love to get your advice on it. I really respect what you've been able to do in business. Can you help guide me on this journey that I'm starting to take? And as a result, pretty often that individual will say, how can I help? Can I help with financing? Can I help with coming as an advisor? You'll find that those people will jump in very quickly.
Right now, with the adoption of AI, how is that being, or how could companies utilize that in the early iteration process, in the early getting the products out to market, getting feedback?
So I would say, there are many different opinions here. A lot of people say that they feel that AI will 10x their productivity. I think in some cases, AI could increase your productivity by 100x. It's a crazy statement, but there are a lot of tools out there that can help accelerate decision-making, research. So I would say that as a starting point, AI should be used through the entire life cycle of your startup at this point.
And Brian, I'm also curious. You mentioned one company, but you said 6. Mm-hmm. What are some of the others that you worked on as well?
Yeah. So one company, I had this idea that I was really interested in medtech, and I didn't have an idea per se. And it's really hard in the medtech space because regulatory compliance and the amount of funding needed to build a medical device or some type of HIPAA compliant application. So the route I took was I built a company that was all about bringing in fractional CTOs into medtech startups. So, and as part of that, I was also helping companies get funding. So during my time running that company, I helped 12 medtech companies successfully raise money.
So it was a staffing company for CTOs? Is that more or less what it was?
It was like not necessarily staffing because they were not full time. It was more professional
fractional.
services. Yeah.
Okay. And what happened to that company? And then what were the ones after?
I then went on to a company where I was developing another e-commerce like company that was a mobile app that allowed people to take videos of their products. Think of it as Craigslist plus YouTube. And so I would set up the scheduling for the YouTube video or these videos within the app for your products in your house.
Oh, that's clever. Okay. And Jeff, yourself, after the kite surfing, what were the next steps?
Yeah, so I ended up getting into a lot of business development roles. And, I think the reason I did that is because I wanted to gain knowledge to do something on my own eventually. So I sat in a CFO role, I sat in a business development role, and I was just helping startups and educating myself along the way. So I wasn't I wasn't willing to jump off the cliff completely myself. So I'd help other startups, but I gained so much knowledge and grew my network. And I have to second what Brian says about like asking investors and other founders for support. I had this, personal network with like dedicating blood, sweat, and tears to teaching people how to do the water sports and travel all over the world with a bunch of Google friends. And so any project I was helping, whether it be a software platform or a consumer product or something, and if I was trying to help the company get to the next stage, I would ask for some investor friends' advice, and they'd have a whole totally different perspective than I had. They're putting on a different set of goggles to look at a project, and so it helped me kind of fine tune my my work and understanding different markets and different waves and things like that. And it's directed me to where I am now as far as like what projects I'm getting behind and, the company that we started ourselves. So.
And sorry, Brian, go on.
John, one thing I forgot to mention, my most recent company, I was just not even thinking about that, was a company called Neurothink that I actually raised $10 million for. And I built this company, grew it to about 30 people. And the purpose of the company was to build a platform for data scientists to onboard projects. So we wanted to automate the whole process. This was before generative AI. And we were basically taking Jupyter Notebook IDE and adding automation around the Jupyter Notebook to provide a faster way to develop machine learning models.
With everything that everyone has said so far, kind of a question for the group. What would be the most valuable thing for a founder to start off with? Money, a network, or experience? And why?
I think a lot of founders do good starting out with experience. And I've seen a lot of folks maybe run a executive position in Amazon or something and then spin off or Google or wherever and then spin off and start their own startup. So they became an expert in a certain field within a big corporate company and then they split off and did their own thing. So I've seen that a bit. So I think it's industry expertise that's going to help get you there. And then obviously you have to gain social credit. And what else, Brian?
And so Sean, I would say, Jeff, I feel differently. I would say that it's not about experience. And I will give you a great example. Mark Zuckerberg. Mark Zuckerberg was just a student at Harvard and had this idea of Facebook. And he knew nothing about all that. He was smart. He knew how to build software, but he had a really cool idea. And others around him at Harvard stood behind him and they built Facebook. And there are endless examples like that where young people have great ideas and no experience and have turned their companies into multi-billion-dollar companies. So for me, I would say that the number one most important thing when you're starting a company is your network. You need to know how to talk to people. You need to know who can help you and who can't help you. Those are really the people. If you look at all the successful founders in the tech space, most of them have incredible networks, either through friends of their family or through their schools. So I would say if you really want to jump out before you get started, make sure that you've got a nurtured and well-oiled network.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with some of that. It's quite a unicorn Mark Zuckerberg created there, but and I guess some of the things I'm talking about of like industry expert, maybe those companies don't grow as big as Facebook, but the network part is what I have that's so well here in the Bay Area that I learn and grow off of, and I think that's why we're able to like start something, and then if it's some of the projects I started are still going, but I'm not there, and then just reinvent yourself until you make it to become successful. Yeah.
Exactly. Perseverance. Never give up. I mean, being an entrepreneur is hard. It's not easy. Every entrepreneur that is super successful now will tell you that at one point they were either building in their garage or sleeping on the floor of their office. It's not easy. And a lot of the big name people also have had many failures in their past, but they just kept on going. They kept on building.
I'm helping one company. It's an unmanned surface vessel company, and it's a woman founder here. And, I got involved with that company because I was helping another friend, the guy who created Google Cloud. We were doing an edge operating system, kind of like IPFS or Arweave. And I asked this founder if she had, a lot of defense relationships, and she built the software company. And I said, hey, can can you help us with our software startup? And she goes, sure, if you help me with my unmanned surface vessel startup. So now I started our own company, Storyboard Capital, but I'm still helping the defense group. And man, you're right, Brian. Like, I would have never even started the company. It just seemed like risk after risk, but the company is starting to go pretty well. And building a hardware product with, computer vision on top is quite a mission, but, she won't take no for an answer, and the company's moving along. So,
well, question for both of you guys. If you have an existing network, how do you go about kind of picking or choosing those core team members to start the project with? I mean, Brian, Jeff, I'm guessing from your years in Silicon Valley and the startups, you could have picked almost anyone to be co-founders, but this team came together. What was it that you said, okay, these are the skills that I need or complement, or how do you go about deciding who the core team is when starting a new project?
I'll say one thing on that is because I have heard this from a few different founders, and I thought it was like a little harsh, maybe, of like, some of the team members might come and go, especially on the early side, So I think as a founder, you have to be careful. Like, you don't give too much equity away, and you think of the company not as yourself, of like how you're going to structure the company to make it thrive and be successful over time, whether you're there or whether your co-founder's there or not. I think that's a pretty important part, because I have seen situations where there's like two co-founders, and then one of the co-founders like has half the stock in the company, and then he's not there anymore, and then the company can't raise any more money or something like that.
What I would say is throughout your career, you build people around you that you trust. And it is, for me, it's imperative that anybody I go into business with at the executive level, partner level, I have to trust them. And, I've done so much hiring and firing in my career. And I can tell you that I've been very disheartened by how many people lie about their backgrounds, lie about their skills. And so you just don't know. And some people are so clever and so Machiavellian. And if you have somebody that you've been working with for 10 plus years and you trust them, I think that's solid gold. Now, the other thing I would say is in your career, you also hire some rock stars, and you do whatever it takes to get those rock stars on your team. Pretty much all rock stars are always doing something, but you've got to pitch them or create a strong enough story to get them on board with your new company.
I think it's quite a balance, because I've seen some startups with some super high level people, admirals, and pretty successful folks on their board and things like that. But you also have to have strong operators and be able to take care of those operators. So it's quite a balance between the two.
And quick question. I mean, let's kind of pivot a little bit to what you're building right now, what you're working on. But to even talk about that, I think our audience needs to understand a little bit of what public-private partnerships are. Can we start with a little bit of back? Well, one, please give the name of the company, what you're building, but then let's go into a little background of what private-public partnerships are, the problem that's being solved, and some of the opportunities.
Sure. So I started Storyboard Capital with a co-founder, Michael Lakowski, who's a business strategist expert that brought about $1.4 billion into a portfolio of companies over the last decade or so. And he's really an expert at teaching companies how to position themselves to learn how to draw down on federal, state, and local money. He's helped Google get a partnership with the state of California. We've helped some startups recently get capital from the state of California. And, it's not just money, though. It's also teaching companies how to fit within opportunity zones and things like that. And we started it because AI can just, like Brian said, 100x your productivity and really focus your go-to-market strategy. So we built this agentic platform, and what comes out of it is tools to position yourself to learn how to draw down on federal, state, and local money. And some of the products is a risk matrix and due diligence documents and things like that. But I'll let Brian take over because he's a product expert.
So, Sean, Jeff, I'll explain a little more about this private-public partnerships, because a lot of the audience may not be aware of what this really means. So I'll give you two examples. One is Chicago. So in 2005, I think it was, Chicago Tollway, they had a stretch of 7.8 miles of highway that they wanted to create toll booths on. And so the city of Chicago went out to the private market and said, we are looking for funding for this project. So they found a private group that would put about $1.8 billion up front for the project. But in return, they got their rights, a 99-year lease right on those toll booths. So the city still owned the toll booths, but this private organization or group would get the rights to all the revenue and all the operational aspect of that. So that's one. The other one is famous one, SpaceX, Elon Musk. So, a lot of people, when they hear stories about, SpaceX running into trouble and how he got money, he didn't just go out to the VC community or the banking community and ask for loans or ask for the VCs because they wouldn't have given it to him. He was literally going bankrupt. And so he went to local jurisdictions and the state of California for money. And over a period of 2016 to now, there's been over $1 billion that he's received from state governments. But it's a flywheel effect. You get money from a state or from a city, and that money can be used as collateral or loans or VCs. So part of this connection between public and private is making sure that you are both building a relationship with the private sector person, whether it be VC or bank, family office, and then also the public group, whether it be a grant or monies that are given to you by the city or state because you've always been a good company within their jurisdiction. So that's basically, in a nutshell, what this private-public partnership is.
Elon did the same thing with Tesla. I think he got about $10 million from the city of San Jose and $10 million from the city of Santa Clara. And if he didn't get that local money, he would not have got the larger government money that he received.
Interesting. So is it one of those things that the governments are looking to do this to create jobs or tax for the community, or why would the governments, why would they be so interested in these types of partnerships?
Tax and jobs. That's a big part of it.
One of the things is, like, we're in this bubble here in Silicon Valley. So, like, all we think about is VC. But you go to Michigan and all these other states, they know how to navigate at a garage and project level is what I've seen of people living off of government grants and things like that. But if you combine the two, then you really get this, unicorn effect, if you want to call it that, where you're combining public and private money to get to a point where you're at Elon Musk or something like that.
And Sean, you bring up a really good point that helps kind of lead the audience into why we did Storyboard. So you've got to come up with a strong value proposition to a state or federal government or VCs. I mean, it's no different. If you're trying to raise money for your business, you've got to prove a strong value prop that will entice people to write checks, basically. So, but the challenge to all this is, how do you write the right story for each stakeholder, each audience? And that really is the crux of Storyboard. We named it Storyboard because we believe that the way that you can raise money the best is you have the right story for the right people. So using AI and a swarm of agents that are all specialized in different areas. So for instance, in our platform, we've got an agent for family offices. We've got an agent for state and local, another one for federal government, et cetera. And we've got one supervising agent that will take all the documentation on a project and understand what they're trying to do, what their main objective is, and then pass it down to all the agents and choose what agents are the most appropriate agents. Now, you also have the ability to deselect an agent if you feel that, I don't want family office money, even though the supervisor and agent says you should talk to family office. But the whole point is crafting this right story for all the stakeholders. So what the platform can do is it creates one full final document, but then also lets you drill down into each individual stakeholder and creates the right type of messages to those stakeholders to bring them into the plan. Now, this has been largely done a manual way through attorneys and investment bankers and VCs. And to do a large infrastructure project, let's say you want to repave the roads in your small town, and your tax base is not high enough to fund it. So you have to go out to the private market. Half these people have no idea how to communicate with VCs. They've always had money through tax money. So as a result, they spend hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars with consultants and attorneys and investment bankers. And a year later, they have a plan. And oftentimes those plans get rejected because it still wasn't the right plan.
Also, because it's a year later. Some of the products that are highly valuable, this risk matrix product that we're talking about, a lot of companies pay millions of dollars to do one every year. And usually startups don't do them at all. So that's one of the tools like an early stage company could leverage off of Storyboard Capital.
Yeah, and to that point, Sean, one of the things that I think is really cool about our risk matrix, because the agents have learned everything about what you're doing for your project and how you're going to raise money, and all the different stakeholders will be involved, it then can build a risk matrix of what could potentially go wrong. What local union could disagree with your project. what politician could be in disagreement? From a financial standpoint, is this even a viable model? So we look at all these different points in the matrix and then establish scores and then build one final score, and then also go deeper into giving you a report of who are the stakeholders that could cause problems in your raising funds.
And why wouldn't you do that internally instead of allowing other people that judge your company? You can demand a higher valuation for your company if you do this type of work on your own.
Quick question to go back to the architect of the whole thing for our audience to visualize it. Is it kind of like an agent? You'd almost look at that as an employee that's really good at one task, and then kind of the super agent or the manager on top of that overseeing what each of the work of the team is doing, and then they review a final report that then gets passed on to the client, which would be the customer. How should they visualize this workflow?
So here's the simple workflow. Sean, let's say you come to Storyboard and say, I want to build a cool new technology that I think could be interesting for the military and local communities. And so you upload all your documentations, your pitch deck, RFPs, everything about you. The coordinating agent will take all that documentation, understand what your objective is, and then pass it on to a research agent. The research agent will go out and do a quick scan to see how viable it is, what's the competitive market look like, what's your TAM, SAM, all the different target markets, and then it will pass it down to all the specialized agents. So after it's gone through that rigor of the coordinator and researcher agent, they determine what agents below need to be engaged. So once that happens, those, think of it as worker bee agents, start working on the research and start, and they're all collaborating with one another as well. So they're, one agent saying, oh, I see that in the state of Illinois, you have a problem with legal compliance. And another says, well, actually, have you thought about the state of Ohio? So there's this constant back and forth until after a few minutes, you get your initial first draft. And then you, the user, you can, just like ChatGPT, you can keep on drilling down deeper. You can say, well, it's not quite right. You can drill down at the agent level, or you can drill down at the global level to get exactly what you want. And then when you feel you've got the right kind of plan and you are comfortable with your risk matrix and everything seems to be lining up, then you can start drilling into, how am I going to start reaching out to the people that will potentially write me checks? And the platform will help write those emails. It will help you. It will draft the skeleton of a pitch deck. It'll even give you notes on a script of how you walk into a boardroom and pitch it to the boardroom.
Now, is this something that eventually is going to be used or possibly used globally, or is this always going to, does these private-public partnerships and these opportunities for these projects, these massive projects, is this something we're going to hear about in Kenya, Uganda, Uruguay, Australia, all over the world?
Absolutely. And Sean, you probably know this better than either Jeff and I. You understand that deploying capital is not easy. People think that if you're seen on a $5 billion fund, they're like, oh, you can just go invest in all these cool ideas. It doesn't work that way. Most of the time, the people that sit on these large funds struggle with finding ways to deploy the money. So absolutely, this will be a global thing because, a project that's in the United States may bleed over to a project overseas, or it may spawn up a whole new idea in another country. So public-private partnerships and, individual without the public component will definitely be on the global side, because it's all about the amount of capital that's out there, that sits out there, that's not deployed worldwide. I mean, it's in the trillions that doesn't get deployed every year. They're trying to find ways to deploy it.
When we were looking at Joe Biden leaving office, and he deployed billions of dollars, and we were looking at all the projects, and only less than 1% of the capital was drawn down on. So all the capital's sitting there. It's just the projects can't meet X, Y, and Z to draw down on the money.
It's hilarious that you guys mentioned that. Just the number of conversations I've had with PE groups that are sitting on 500 million or a billion or whatever. They say we need to get 2 or 3 platform companies this year, or we need that, or you'll just. I mean, gosh, I was sitting down with one gentleman that's working with a family office. It's just going off. We need to deploy $1 billion, and we have no projects in the pipeline. Don't tell anyone this, blah blah. And you're like, I wish I had that problem, but.
But it's not just money, right? It's opportunity zones. Like we have a friend's drone project. If he can fit in an opportunity zone, then he'll double his revenue. There's some states where if a VC invests, then the state will match the capital, and then the VC gets twice as much value. I mean, those are just very simple things. I mean, you dive down this rabbit hole, and there's so much value from state and local that no one in like low interest loans. There's so many different levers to pull that a lot of, especially in Silicon Valley, so we're so focused on VC that a lot of us don't know how to draw down on that, or a lot of the defense guys only know how to get like the basic SBIR grants, and they don't know how to leverage the other grants.
Jeff, Brian, before wrapping up, just a couple quick questions. One, what should our listeners be thinking about AI in the future beyond this interview? And then 2, if they want to learn more about your company, what's the best way to go about doing that?
Jeff, do you want to go first?
You go for it.
Okay, so I'll start first with how you can find us. It's storyboardcapital.com. Very easy. And what I would say for AI in the future, in my talks with JP Morgan, I do a series of talks. I've talked now in about a dozen different cities for JP Morgan for corporate treasury clients. And the big question that always comes up is, should I be scared of AI? And I think that most people now at this point that are in the space know that there's nothing necessarily to be scared of. AI is not sentient. It's still based on probability in these transformer models. The one thing's happening, although the models are getting smarter and smarter, and it's quickly changing the way that we work. And getting back to the productivity, I easily see a 10x improvement in my productivity. I can't imagine in the future, not too distant in the future, if you're not using AI in your company or your job, you're going to be left behind. There's no way that you're going to be able to compete. It's like an individual with an extremely low IQ trying to compete against Einstein. It is crazy to think about. And AI is showing up in so many different areas. I advise other companies as well. And one of the companies I'm advising is a company called Alarin. And Alarin, they are very specifically doing business-to-business commerce for mid-market manufacturers. And, this is a very interesting thing because it's not like B2C commerce, because there's the quotings and there's the relationship. There's so many levels of complexity. AI now can handle so much of that complexity. That's one example. Another example would be, what's happening with orchestration. Another company that I've been helping advise, which I think is honestly going to be the next one of these next big unicorns, a company called SmithOS. They've built a orchestration tool that what they're doing is they're taking an agent and converting the agent into actually an operating system it's a lightweight operating system that can be deployed on edge devices to on-prem services that basically completely bypass the whole DevOps process and gives you full AI automation. So just imagine that, with companies like that, being able to do that, you're now going to easily be able to spin up no code required AI automation that will help improve your business and your manufacturing line or whatever it is. So what I'd say, two big takeaways. AI is going to get a lot easier to use. You must use it if you want to be competitive. And I think that it will ultimately just reshape the way we all work.
I've been to a few of the, ChatGPT related conferences and talked to some of those executives in the unmanned surface vessel company. We have a guy who's on the board of OpenAI, and he's also on the board of this Tempest company. And those big models are begging for companies like us to build industry experts to build workflow solutions for our specific industries. So that's like the wave of AI that's hitting us right now, is all these workflow solutions. And then obviously the bigger challenge is, pushing data to the edge and devices and the solving the energy problem, which is a major one. So we're not going to get into that one, but we'll help with our industry expertise for public-private partnerships.
Perfect. We'll follow up with another interview for the energy and that. But in the meantime, Brian, Jeff, I want to thank you guys for taking the time to be on this week's episode of the Silicon Valley Podcast. I learned a lot. I know our listeners learned a lot. When I'm not the host of the Silicon Valley Podcast, I'm an investment banker focused on mergers, acquisitions, growth capital. Connect with me on LinkedIn at Sean Flynn. And if you want to find out more about our past episodes and what we're working on in the future, go to thesiliconvalleypodcast.com. Check out our archives and everything that we're working on. And with that, I want to thank everyone one more time for this week's episode of the Silicon Valley Podcast. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Sean.